Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and this is our World Team Trophy 2025 recap. So this is the actual official end to the 2024-25 season.
And boy, were they tired.
Yeah, the exhaustion was definitely evident on a lot of the skaters. Not all of them.
No, some of them look peppy.
Some of them were still cruising along with full energy, and a few people actually gave their best performances of the season at this event. And overall, I thought it was absolutely delightful. You may think it's cringe out there, some of you, but I think this event is super fun, and I like how extra and silly and goofball it gets.
I appreciate everyone is entitled to their own opinion, yes, but I also appreciate the goofiness. I could tell that Chris on the ISU network liked most of it, and at a certain point, it was just like, what the heck is happening?
But I love those moments. I think it's terrific. So anyway, I thought this was a ton of fun. It was exactly what I was hoping for. Really fun team dynamics, a lot of playfulness in the kiss and cry, a ton of support to the skaters from their teams. And I didn't see as much internation interplay in the same way like we had before. 2 years ago, the last event, it seemed like there was just a ton of that. But also, we didn't get as many good shots of the stands while things were going on. But in the end, I think that this was a very entertaining event. And like I said a minute ago, a lot of terrific performances from a few skaters that I think that beyond just getting the season's best scores, which this event is a little fluffy. And so sometimes those numbers are a bit bigger. I didn't feel like it was quite as over generous at this one as it has been in the past, though.
No, maybe just a little bit of extra sprinkles on top, but nothing crazy, I don't think.
So this shook out basically how we thought it was going to. I think when we were doing our predictions for it, I thought that it was going to go USA, Japan, Italy. I think you said Japan, USA,
I said Japan,
Italy.
USA, Italy.
I got it right, but it's not like it was a super surprise to see those three countries on there. It is very exciting for Italy, though, because this is their first World Team Trophy podium placement. So they were obviously very excited about it. Also, the medals were like really cool.
They looked gorgeous. And you could see that some of the skaters, whenever they got their medals, were sort of hypnotized by them. Like particularly Riku Miura just kept staring at hers like, ooh, which is very cute. But I also thought it was worth noting that Team USA got the highest team score in the event's history here. They were incredibly dominant.
I think it's also not surprising that in an event that included all four of the world champions, that all four of the world champions, I should say like two individual skaters and two teams, all won their events.
Yeah.
I mean, that shouldn't be shocking, but I think in the case of Alyssa Liu, it's actually really nice because it proves that her world's win wasn't some kind of fluke, that it was her coming into the top of her game at the end of the season. So I think maybe that's a good segue into starting up talking about the individual events.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to start with the women anyway, just because I think that that event seemed, to me at least, kind of the strongest of all of them, like in terms of everybody looking a little bit more alert than in other disciplines.
Until the free skate. I think that the women struggled in the free skate a little bit because they all said that they were exhausted because of the training. And
I don't know. I think maybe I'm just remembering how exhausted all of the men's event was. And oh God, the pairs. Every guy looked like they were going to die.
Oh, yes. It did look rough on the pairs guys for sure.
So it's not saying a lot, but I do think that the women handled it pretty well. And yes, Alyssa Liu, first in the short, first in the free, looked pretty much as good as she did at Worlds, actually got a higher score on her long program. Just insane. The trajectory of Alyssa Liu, she just shines so brightly, and it's just amazing to see how far she has come so fast after such a long break. I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'm still not over it. It is the stuff of queens.
A complication in talking about this event is that it doesn't operate in a cumulative fashion in the same way as a normal non-team event does. So instead of you do the short and then you do the long and then you add all those things together, instead they essentially count as separate competitions, which I think is actually pretty great in the team event because whatever your placement is in each one of those events, you get a certain number of points for it. So it's not like we can just say, okay, this is where they ended up cumulatively because it's differentiated in that way.
Yeah.
However, like you said, Alyssa Liu won both. So it's easy to say she won the women's competition pretty definitively. And well, I think that you could see at the end of her free skate, her starting to gas out a little bit.
Yes.
It wasn't quite as effortless as it was at Worlds. It was still a delight. Her short program was still magnificent. And like you said, I mean, she's just the current queen of figure skating. It's such an astounding rise. And I really love seeing her come here and deliver in the same way that she did at Worlds, because after having a comeback season, after being retired for a couple of years, getting back on the ice really swiftly, and making yourself already a contender, but not necessarily one who anybody thought was going to be on the podium at Worlds, let alone taking the whole thing, you could easily write it off as, oh, you just peaked at the right time. Everything worked out just that right way.
In hometown crowd.
Right. Then she goes on to World Team and then just delivers at that same level. So it really is like the proof in the pudding of how great her training has been, how terrific her programs are, and just the incredible quality that she has. It's funny to hear Alyssa talk about her programs, because at Worlds, she said that her MacArthur Park program was the best she'd ever skated it, but she's still aware that this is not as good as she can be, that she feels her ceiling is higher. We know she's practicing triple axels, and that there's a good chance that when we see her next year, she's going to be even more conditioned, with maybe a little bit more technical firepower than she has now, which means she could potentially get just that much more dangerous. So I think everything that we saw here is very exciting. Plus, she is the vibe. And so this event is a perfect environment for her.
Oh, yeah. The essence of team culture seemed perfectly to fit Alyssa Liu. But I also want to give gigantic kudos to Kaori Sakamoto, because second in the short, and really close second in the short. I think it's like less than 0.2 of a point. So right there with her, and not that far back. She was third in the free. So I think, again, if you're looking at it cumulatively, Kaori would have been second overall. But regardless, she was the captain of the Japan team, and you couldn't ask for a better sportsman, representative, goofball than Kaori Sakamoto. And throughout this competition, I just kept watching Kaori, because you could see her essentially being the event director of the skaters in general, not just Team Japan, but overall. Like, you just watched her take charge, but not in a dominant way, but mostly in a like, I am here to help everyone. It was just like team lead. And I'm so glad she got 2 strong programs to end her season with.
Yeah, I mean, she's such a terrific role model for the sport. And so I love every opportunity to see her not just shine on the ice, but off. I think that free skate definitely had a lot of problems. You could see it starting to come apart at the seams a little bit. So it wasn't the magnificent version of it that we saw at Worlds. But
she even looked surprised by her score, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is a place where it was definitely a little generous. I did see that Kaori has talked about her next year's programs, and she thinks that she's going to have a free skate that's a little bit more relaxed and isn't quite as busy as far as the amount of just stuff she has to do in it. Even though this program served her so well at Worlds, it hasn't been the perfect match for her the entire season, and I think that that's something they're going to try to work on. Still, she was amazing here. But I really think another one of the big stories here is the return of Amber Glenn after a pretty difficult time in the short program that landed her in 7th in that competition, but in the free coming back to land in 2nd place and not very far off of Alyssa Liu's score, I think about 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
So those 2 women being in the last competition of this event and really sealing the deal for Team USA, I think that has to be a big boost of confidence for Amber, who, you know, we know was indomitable for the first part of the season, but then Worlds didn't work out as well for her. So having her last competitive skate of the season work out as well as that free skate did, I think that's a really big deal.
Oh, it's huge, because that is the best she has skated that free program. That's a personal best score. Leading into next year with the Olympics, this being her last competitive performance of the season, being her best competitive performance of the season, I'm thrilled for her, because I do think that that provides her such good motivation going into the off season and training and putting together programs. It seemed like between the short program and the free, she talked about spending time with the team and getting some advice from them on how to handle the combination of touring, which she has never done in Japan. And she's just coming off of Stars on Ice Japan to come into a competition and maintain her energy and maintain the enthusiasm and not overthink every movement that she's doing. And it just sounds like they gave her some really good direction, which is only further proof that I think we need more team competitions in this sport, just because you're not just you and your coach and your team. You have Team USA or Team Japan, Team France, who was my favorite team, vibing with each other, helping each other, supporting each other in a way that they don't typically get to. Particularly for Amber, I think it lifted her up.
Another person that I think got some big time redemption here, and it's what we were really hoping for her, is Anastasia Gubanova from Team Georgia. One, this is Team Georgia's first time in this event. So even though they came in last overall, they had it kind of stacked against them because they had to bring some skaters out of retirement so they could fill out the full roster. But the big thing here was seeing Gubanova, I'm never sure which way it is, Goobs. It's seeing her have such a redemption arc from the terrible time that she had at Worlds, because in the world competition, she was in, I think, 28th place after the short program, which washed her out of the free and took that Olympic spot off the table until the qualifier event in September. For a skater of her caliber, that is just such an enormous disaster. And you could see the heartbreak on her, and it was really difficult to watch. But we know that Goobs is a much better skater than that, and she came out here and really showed that.
Third in the short, fourth in the free, and her fourth in the free, she had a 141.39. That's a huge score for her. So while it might have only been fourth place, that's only because of how phenomenal Alyssa Liu, Amber Glenn, and Kaori Sakamoto were. Amazing. And she looked thrilled.
Yeah, I believe that was her season's best, and you could tell that meant everything to her.
This whole competition seemed to mean everything to her. Like, it's the most emotion I've actually ever seen from Gubanova. Like, she really looked like all of it meant the world to her. And I really hope it carries her into that Olympic qualifier event and reminds her, like, it's a formality. I want her to go in thinking that, like, I have to just go in here and just do my job, get it done so that I can go to the Olympics, because it would be a real shame if she didn't.
Looking on through the rest of the list, I mean, most of the results are relatively consistent between the short and the long, although there are a few places where it shifts around. But just looking at some of the other competitors, Japan's Mona Chiba was delightful here. There were a few problems. I think she had a fall in the free skate that kind of knocked her down a little bit further. But she is just so fun to watch. The brightness that she brings to the ice is so lovely. And she's come so far in the last couple of years in her expression and her articulation. And even though she was a little further back here, she's still just amazing.
The evolution of Mona Chiba in the past couple of years is just astounding. But I could say the same for Laranaki Gutman. I have been so impressed with her. Just between worlds in here, I feel like she has leveled up in maturity. And maybe it was just the relaxed kind of setting of this. Her expression was better here. Something about the way she came out and commanded the ice. I was just real excited by what I saw from Laranaki Gutman. And I hope whatever this version is that we saw at World Team Trophy, that's what I want to see next season going into an Olympics in Italy, because she looked great here.
I think this might be the best I've ever seen her. Outside of some small quibbles, like she popped a jump in the free skate, but otherwise that free skate was the best version of that I think we've seen. I'm pretty sure she got a pretty massive season's best.
Yeah.
And just in general, we've been talking about this rise of Laranaki Gutman over the course of the season, particularly when she did get on the podium during the Grand Prix. And yeah, like she came out here looking composed, calm, a real definite sense of maturity in the skating. These were some of my favorite programs there. I thought she was fantastic.
Overall, the rest of the women, and it's not to dismiss any of them, I thought most of them did a great job. And I'm just impressed that they were able to do anything at this point in the season. They all deserve a long, long summer's nap.
I do want to make one shout out, though, to Team Georgia's Alina Yurashadze. She's in last place in both of these events, and she had been brought out of retirement in order to compete here with just a couple of months of notice to get back on the ice and start really skating like a competitor again. And she did not have the technical ability to be able to actually compete with the rest of these women. So it was kind of a foregone conclusion that she would be much further down the ranking. However, she skated clean by avoiding trying to do big things that she couldn't do and just focusing on performance. And her free skate was delightful.
It really was.
It was so cute. She had this ABBA routine that absolutely won over the crowd. And she focused on delivering a really enjoyable performance over trying big triple jumps that she wasn't going to be able to land. And yeah, you can see it's somebody who's not in competitive form, but I think she did a really fine job. And the audience really gave that energy back to her. She got this big, enthusiastic standing ovation, and you could see it meant an awful lot to her. So for somebody who just kind of got tagged in so that they had a body in the lineup,
yeah,
even coming in last place, she got those 2 points for her team. I think she did them proud. And I was just really taken with that performance.
She was lovely. Well, let's talk about the pairs, which, as you mentioned, there were only 6 teams here. And the team points, they do go up to 12, but their lowest is 7. So the last place, the lowest amount of points you can get is 7 points. The champions here easily in both the short and the long were Riku Miura and Ryuji Kikara from Japan. They were just near perfect in the short.
The short was incredible. Wow.
The free was also phenomenal, just had a few little, almost more like checks than anything else, nothing major. And just, they were flying. They were so fast, so confident. I almost felt like you could see the world title confidence had like especially bolstered Riku. She just looked like she was game faced the whole time.
Yeah, they were skating like champions, and that confidence was evident. Both programs were terrific, but that Paint It Black short program has only gotten better as the season's gone by. But both the programs have illustrated something, a recurring theme we've talked about this season, which is that material matters, and that getting the right song, the right kind of program, the right kind of vibe that matches you or that allows you to do something that nobody's seen you do before is so important and so impactful. And that Paint It Black program is so surprising on them because they are such bright personalities, but it works so well, and they just dominated with it here. And they got their big season's best on that number, and you got to see the Riku dance where she hops up and bounces around and screams, and it's the most adorable thing in the world. It was super fun, and yeah, those were great.
And also continuing their consistently great season, Sarah Conti and Niccolo Macchi. I feel like every time I see them, they're better. Even if not every element is 100%, there is a level up again in the confidence. It's something about their security on the ice, in their material, in each other. It's just so noticeable. They have come so far, and this continued the trajectory, even though I could tell that they were exhausted in that free skate like everyone else. It didn't matter. Like, I just felt like their quality level just keeps going up, and I really feel like they are absolutely on track for a podium placement at the Olympic Games. It's obvious that that is their goal, and they are getting closer and closer to it.
They really feel like they're coming into their power. Their performance level is really strong.
Huge.
And they just feel more confident in each other than they have in a long time. And every time they take the ice, it's just exciting. But I have to say that Georgios Anastasia Metlakina and Luka Bralava looked better here than I think I've seen them ever.
100%. I think part of it was that Anastasia looked comfortable in her own skin. She didn't look as stressed as she usually does. And maybe it is that team dynamic that not all of the pressure is on you. Georgia had to know, like, they wanted to do their best, of course, but they didn't expect to be on the podium here. So they were just happy to be here. And I think that helped the mood because they looked happier with each other, more connected to each other.
Yes.
And they were so expressive to the crowd. It felt like a level up, and I'm curious to see if it continues or if it was just more like the world team kind of bubble of happiness that everyone was feeling and they just like got to show it off. But regardless, great performances.
Yeah, I think you're totally spot on that they looked far more connected than we've seen, because we've talked a lot about that team being physically well matched, but often seeming disconnected from each other personally and emotionally. You didn't feel that here. They seemed like they were far more aligned. They were obviously having fun. It was great to see them with community in there and how much that, particularly on Anastasia. Luca is always very interactive with other skaters, But sometimes I feel like Anastasia sits in the background a little bit, and here she just looked really happy. And yeah, it was great to see, and they were a ton of fun.
In fourth, I do want to mention Deanna Salato-Dudek and Maxime Deschamps. They were fourth in both the short and the free. Everything about them to me radiated that effortless competence that they always have, mixed with people that are so done with the material that they have that
yeah,
I could feel how much that they don't want to be skating these programs anymore, especially the short. I just had that sense of, okay, as soon as this is over, we never have to skate this again. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but based on some of the interviews, stuff that I saw, I think I'm close. But regardless, I thought that their free program was lovely. Overall, they did a great job here, but I really think they need the off season to kind of recalibrate and come back with material that fits them better. Because the longer the season went on, the more times I saw these programs, the more I felt that disconnect. They keep trying to rejigger these programs into the right mix, the right thing. And it almost came together, and it came together pretty well at Four Continents. But that's the only place that I felt like it did. And even there, it wasn't ideal. They just need different material. Look at what happened last year when they had a fantastic short and a fantastic free. They won the world title. Material matters, like we keep saying over and over again this season. And I feel like they might be the best example of when material doesn't work.
On the flip side of it, it's interesting to see them having shifted to a new Gala program.
That's way sillier.
It's a much more playful program than we've seen them do before. And I felt like that was them saying, we want to showcase different parts of us. And we didn't want to go into this and be serious. We wanted to just have a good time. And it's really cute. I particularly like her outfit. It's really adorable. It's not a refined thing yet, but it was a good time. But I would assume they're already working on the programs for next season.
I have no doubt.
And I'm certain that the conversation is we need to get that combination right because we didn't this season.
Yes.
And then in fifth on both of the events were Elisa Efimova and Misha Mitrofana from the US. They didn't manage to capture the huge moment energy that they got at Worlds and at US Nationals. They still did very solid, competent skates here. There were just some minor issues here and there, but they were up against a really strong slate of competitors here. And I wouldn't have expected them to come ahead of any of those four teams ahead of them.
They did exactly what they needed to do.
Right. They served the team here. They did the job, and they looked so happy to be involved in all of it. Particularly, Alyssa is so entertaining to watch in the kiss and cry and the team bleachers. Her reactions were really, really fun. I just love this team so much, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with them next season.
And then in last place was Kovalev and Kovalev from France. I thought that particularly their free skate looked better than I've seen it in a while. This team has had a lot of problems this season, so I wish them a wonderful and healthy off season so that hopefully they can come back at full power next year.
Kovalev and Kovalev have the feeling of a team that are probably ready for retirement, but there isn't anybody to replace them in France. So they're sticking it out for the Olympics, both for themselves, I'm sure, but also to represent their country. I actually really like that Toxic short program. I wish it had come together a little bit better here, but I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, the free was pretty nice. I thought it was fairly strong.
Well, let's move on to the men where, surprising absolutely no one, Ilya Malinin took the top spot in both the short and the free, but not as solidly as he often has. His short had just a minor mistake, pretty minimal, but his free was a bit messy.
Yeah. You could see here that Ilya was still striving for that huge zillion quad program.
Other than he did not go for the quad axle.
Yes. And you could tell, again, the tiredness on them. A lot of these skaters have been touring in Japan leading up to this, so they've been performing like night after night. So it's a very different type of training environment for them to come and do this. And yeah, the free skate had a bunch of issues, but
it was still incredible, though.
It was still awesome. It was so thrilling for the crowd. It was super fun to see his mom with him. Normally, she doesn't go to his competitions. It's always his dad who's in there with him. Getting to see her part of the Team USA group was really fun. But I think the real story is two absolutely phenomenal, nearly flawless skates from the US team captain, Jason Brown.
Oh my goodness, Jason Brown. Just keep it coming because, geez, it was beautiful. third in the short, second in the free skate against this list of people. That's nuts. And absolutely impeccable skates. The thing is, his free skate even had like one ever so slight, he doubled a triple loop. That was his only mistake. But still, it wasn't 100% perfect, and he was still second. He was gorgeous to watch, and I appreciated in his post-competition interview, he was like, I feel like the season kind of should just be getting started. He knows that he had a rough first half of the season. It didn't really come together until he got past his equipment issues that were really bogging him down through the first half. But my goodness, once he actually figured it all out, as great as he was at Worlds, just multiply that by whatever number and just that's what it is. That's how good it was. It makes me so excited to see him next year at the Olympic Games again, because he has done nothing but say, by the way, I am absolutely still on this team. You're going to have to beat me to get past me. And I love that.
Definitively in the top of the performances from this entire event. Absolutely extraordinary skates. And what can you say more about Jason other than him being an absolute fantastic team captain?
And even saying thank you to the crowd in Japanese.
Well, because he's fluent in Japanese from all of these years that he spent touring over there. As an American, it feels like a lot of the rest of the world that aren't native English speakers have to kind of pick up English to speak on the international stage. It's so refreshing to have an American who can go to a place like this and then speak the language there.
It's so respectful.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, as a representation for the U.S. Fed and just for us as fans, I just loved that. I thought that was awesome.
Also having a good showing here, especially in the short, was Adam Shaham-Fa. He was second in the short program with a spectacular performance. His free, not quite as great. He was sixth there, but still, this is the comeback tour. He went to Europeans and he wasn't as great as he wanted to be, but it was a step. Worlds was the same. This felt like another step. He just needs mileage again after the injury. So I'm glad he got to come here and do this, but I am sure he's also glad to like take that step back and get healthy and really get prepared for next year.
And I think it'll be good for him to let go of that Dune program.
Yes.
I think while it's a solid program, it hasn't always served him super well.
I love that short, though.
The short is beautiful, and he didn't get to perform it in very many competitions. I would not be mad if he held on to that one.
I'd be pretty happy.
And always worth noting that his Gala program, the Van Gogh program, is absolutely fantastic. I was so in love with it there. Another skater who had a pretty uneven experience here that we had high hopes for, but it didn't quite pan out, was Yuma Kagiyama. Yuma was good, not great here. It wasn't quite up to his total caliber. You could see that he was tired. You could see that he was trying really hard to deliver the big skates, and they weren't quite coming together. He never really looked like he was quite had his center of gravity over his skates correctly. So many of his landings turned out in weird ways that just looked kind of flawed, and he just often seemed like he wasn't in complete control of those jumps.
The one thing I do appreciate, though, is I feel like I saw a happy Yuma Kagiyama. He seemed lighter. He was enjoying the team environment. There were a few cute moments in the kiss and cry with him and his dad and the team being silly with him, and it delighted me because so many times this season we saw a very obviously stressed, somewhat disappointed, or just overly serious Yuma. And I understand he has a lot of pressure on him at all times. So seeing him be a lighter, happier, embracing the moment type of Yuma brought me a lot of joy, because I do feel like that pressure has to weigh a lot on him.
I think that he needs to reclaim his delightful puppy dog energy that we're used to seeing from him as he goes into next season.
Nothing makes me happier than a happy Yuma Kagiyama.
Yeah. And I think that as he has gotten into his own head in him trying to compete harder and harder against Ilya Malinin, I think that he's lost a little bit of that energy that makes him who he is. So I want him to reclaim that. I will say, though, I was really impressed with Shunsato, who had a couple of really solid skates here. I think they were a bit of a step back as far as his crowd interaction, because we did see him embrace the Boston audience a little bit more. Not a ton, but a little bit more than we see from him.
It was something.
But these were those super competent, tight jumps that he does. Not perfect programs, but still very solid from a guy who was obviously sick.
Yeah, he was masked a lot of the time with the team. So obviously trying to keep them away from whatever he was dealing with. But for someone who obviously wasn't feeling that well, did a great job. And he is just the most efficient jumper. He has such a wonderful position in the air. It's fun to watch him jump. I just want him to relax his neck so badly. I want him to look out into the crowd so much. I know it's there, Shun. I believe in you.
And then you look at Team France's captain, Kevin Aymoz.
Oh,
I mean, if we want to talk about extra here,
I love him.
Kevin went the full extra mile, both in keeping a hyped Team France in the bleachers and the kiss and cry, in their costumes, everything about how they approached
Day
it.
3 costume. Oh my God.
When Kevin showed up as a Japanese schoolgirl,
I loved it.
it was hilarious. And a lot of their antics in the kiss and cry, particularly in the final event with the women, were incredible. Just absolutely hysterical.
That's when I really heard Chris starting to get like the weariness.
But he had a good laugh at it too. I
Yes.
think he appreciated it. But Kevin was 6th in the short and then 7th in the free. So they were not super high placements, but both the performances were really nice, very strong. He was clearly happy. He was having a good time. There wasn't a moment at this event that I felt stress on Kevin. It just felt like he was there to hype up his team, have a good time, and put on a great show for that Japanese audience. And the Japanese audience totally were lit up for him.
He was a phenomenal team captain. That was genuinely obvious, hyping everyone, giving everybody a lot of love. That alone is amazing. But to go out there and just enjoy the audience the way he obviously did, and to hear him in his post-competition interview talk about how this was his best season ever, that he really feels like he's going into his off season with a lot of hope for next year. It warms my heart, especially after everything he went through last year, to know how positive this has been for him. I mean, he's 5th in the world after World Championships, so it's not surprising that he feels a lot of hope. He did phenomenally well, and I am so excited to see what he does next year.
If there's a side note from that in talking about him as the team captain, there was a Team Spirit Award at the end of this.
They got it wrong.
Yeah, it was given to Team USA, and
Who was great.
I appreciate that, particularly because we know Japan loves Jason Brown and Jason Brown loves Japan, and it feels like that might have had an impact on that. But really, I think Team France should have won the Team Spirit Award because they were just so much fun through all of that.
I loved watching Jinya holding up a sign in her French flag onesie that on one side was Team France and on the other side was Merci Japan.
Yes.
And I really did feel like France got screwed over. They should have won that Team Spirit Award, but a close second.
If there's a factor in why they didn't get it, I guess it's probably because there's a few members of their team that are not nearly as extroverted and not as sort of loud and bright in those environments in the way that some of the other teams were. But still, yeah, I think Team France should have gotten it. And then I think that we should just wrap up now with the ice dance. So again, like pairs, there's only 6 teams in this, and they almost hold steady between the two events in their placements. But like we were saying before, you send world champions and world champions do world champion stuff. And Madison Chalk and Evan Bates came in here and just did what they do. Deliver really fantastic programs that wow an audience, that look almost effortless and were beautiful.
Yeah, we're absolutely incredible. I think the one thing that actually kind of surprised me is they extended their lead in the short over Gillis and Poirier. Their score was even higher, about a 4-point gap, which all season it felt like that was their weakness. And I feel like Worlds and here it took some kind of step forward that now just pushed that even farther ahead. That said, it's their free skate. Their free skate is magic. I am sad that this is the last time we'll see it, but there's always YouTube. And I will be going back and rewatching it over and over again because I do absolutely adore that Take 5 program. It was just nice to see them look relaxed. They were so comfortable in those programs. I didn't feel an ounce of effort in them. And that's saying something, especially whenever they have to be just as tired as everybody else.
In second place in both the free and the rhythm were Canada's Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier. Piper was the captain for Team Canada and did a really fine job with that. Again, the Canadians were having a blast. They had this bear costume onesie that they were passing around between everybody. So
Yes.
every different event, somebody else was wearing it, which was really funny. They were really great here. I think that it maybe felt a little less shiny in the rhythm dance than it had previously, but they're still just so nuanced and they did a great job. But for me, the best performance from them was at the gala.
I agree.
Their gala Autumn Leaves program is gorgeous.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where you're watching the gala performance and I had to remind myself that this wasn't their competitive program. And I know that obviously there is a lot that goes into a competitive program and there's reasons why exhibitions sometimes feel better because they get to just be expressive and not have those same requirements. But yeah, I agree. Everything about that Autumn Leaves program just left me kind of breathless in the best possible way. It was beautiful.
In third in both rhythm and free, you have Charlene Guinard and Marco Fabri from Team Italy. And Charlene was the team captain for Italy, and she led them to their first podium placement here at World Team, which was terrific.
Done.
Very, very good job, Charlene. I thought the rhythm was nice. I still just don't love this free skate. And I felt like here they got pushed even kind of further back in the scores. Because if you look, there's a 10-point difference between them and Gillis and Poirier. And you could see it on their faces. Even though they did a perfectly fine job with that program, they know now that the judges just don't like it and don't want to reward it. So I'm really hoping that's a informative thing for them going into next season, particularly going into the Olympics, that they need to find material that lives up to their ability because they are a fantastic team. They just need to be skating to the right material.
I really like the way you said that. They need to have material that can match them because this felt like the wrong choice all season long. They made adjustments. They changed their costumes. They did everything they could to save this program and it didn't work. It was diminishing returns all season long. So yes, I want them to figure out what that alchemy is that brings together their incredible proficiency at technical ice dancing and all of the best things about their aesthetic and just make it work because this really unfortunately didn't.
The thing I think is curious as a takeaway from this one is the placements and difference of those placements in the rhythm and free between France's Laboreva and Brosseau and Georgia's Davis and Smolkin. Because most of the time in any competition, you would see Laboreva and Brosseau easily be the higher ranked team. And they are such a refined team. They are a little avant-garde, but I love their programs. I love their skating style. I particularly really like that Rasputin rhythm dance.
That's great.
One that I enjoy an awful lot. However, Davis and Smolkin moved ahead of them in the free skate. They have that Led Zeppelin program that hit really well in Boston. And here they got in a couple of points ahead of Laboreva and Brosseau. Now, I think that Yevgeny and Jeffrey maybe had like a little bobble somewhere in there. So it wasn't flawless, but I think it was a definite surprise for them to get shifted in that fifth position.
And I really think it was that they dropped a couple of levels in, I think, two different elements. What lost it for them was on the TES. Like they had a better PCS score than Davis and Smolkin. If you really want to get into the nitty gritty of all the scoring, Davis and Smolkin had a higher technical. They had better levels overall. Not by much, but enough. It was 2 points, and 2 points difference means you win. And by win, I mean they came in fourth and Chinya and Jeffrey came in fifth. But it has to be kind of a little bit of a jolt after a season of steadily being ahead of this team to now be one step below them in the free. That may or may not mean anything since this is a team competition, but I bet it stung a little bit.
Any shift like that in ice dance feels significant. Yeah. I will note that while I'm often lukewarm on this team, that Davis and Smolkin have shown a lot of growth. It always felt like Gleb was the superior partner and Diana was a bit behind him. And I think that while he's still the sharper of the two, I think Diana has shown some improvement. They as a team have unified a lot more. It's very clear that they really enjoy that Led Zeppelin program and that it works really well on them. And me being a rock and roll guy, like seeing a real rock and roll program is very exciting. I have become more impressed with them over the course of the season. It certainly was a lot better than what we saw them do at Skate America. So
that's fair.
Yeah, they were fairly solid.
And while they did not have the most competitive scores, I loved seeing Yoshida and Morita just having fun out there. They had a really bizarre fluke fall in their rhythm dance, which I felt terrible about because it was right at the end.
That's always the worst.
But their free dance was lovely and their exhibition was lovely.
Oh yeah, their exhibition was really fun, super cute. She has this gorgeous like emerald dress that was so good. That was maybe the best thing that they did.
They just have tons of personality and promise, so it's just nice to see them.
You know, speaking of the gala there, I think something that is worth mentioning from the gala is one of the guests that they had was Mao Shimada. As you would expect in Japan, you're going to bring out your junior world champion and have her skate. But man, you got to think that all of the senior women are just grateful that they've got another year before that wrecking ball makes her way into senior competition, because Mao was so good here. It was astonishing how good she was.
Well, she did her Wicked short program, and I thank you, whoever was doing the lighting, for giving that flood of green light so that she could really embrace her character. It was really, really beautiful. And I know that she'll have a new program next season, but I'm going to be sad to see this Wicked short program leave because it is so perfect for her. Yeah, she is just astoundingly good. I look forward to when she is finally in senior competition, but yeah, I'm kind of with you. I expect that most of the senior women are like, yeah, it's cool that you're going to be in juniors for another year. That's great. Thank you.
Well, and also she has spent some training time with Ilya and
she and Moni have.
Yeah, but she's been taking pointers from him about how to tighten up her jumps, make them more efficient, and work on getting more quads. She has a quad toe, but it hasn't been something that she's been able to land consistently or cleanly. And she said in interviews that in working with him, she realized some of the holes in her own technique and thinks that she can make significant improvements there and maybe open up other quads in her arsenal, which will only make her scarier out there. But my God, she's just so impressive. That Wicked program was amazing.
It was. All right, we have to give our final Gold in Our Heart award. Are you ready to do that and end our 2024-2025 season with one more person?
Oh my God. I'm super torn on this one. So I am going to step back and let you do yours first.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Because I feel like we could potentially pick the same person. And I think it's easier if I let you go and then I can hedge my bet on who I'm picking.
All right. Well, I have two. And it's because I'm going to give separate awards, one for the skating itself and one for the overall team player, fun, supportive person in the stands for the team. For the skating alone, I'm giving it to Amber Glenn because Amber had one of those skates in her free that just made me want to cry. She worked so hard. She had so much pressure on her all season long, which only grew exponentially as she continued to win competition after competition. And she showed such grit and grace through all of it. Worlds didn't go the way she wanted, but she was still top 6 in the world, which was phenomenal after a wonderful free skate. Here, she had a really disappointing short program, which in years past, we probably wouldn't have seen a big comeback from Amber. We sometimes occasionally could, but not like this. This was nearly flawless. I think the only mistake was a scratchy landing. That's about it. Everything else was beautiful. And just her getting that moment at the end of the season here was absolutely the best. And in my other gold in my heart is Kevin Aymoz for putting on a dress and making everybody in the arena, but especially his own team, laugh their butts off. He was so delightful, so loving, so supportive. There's just something that brought me so much joy about seeing him every time in that kiss and cry. And it wasn't just because he was hilarious. It was just because you could tell that he was keeping everybody up. And I applaud that. So Amber Glenn, Kevin Aymoz.
Wow. Well, then, if you're going to pull that, well, I'm going to do it too. So yeah, I'll have a skater and a team supporter. for this skater, I will go with Laura Naki-Gutman. I
Nice.
think that as I reflect on all of the competitive programs that we watched and the ones that have just really stood out to me and the ones that I kind of go over in my mind again and again, particularly Laura's free skate really stands out to me. And also, we've been talking about this whole season was a real breakout for her. I mean, getting on the podium during the Grand Prix was a big deal for her, getting some international notice, which I don't think had happened before. And I think going into this event, one of the question marks was thinking about next season. Italy has one Olympic spot available, and they have her and Anna Pizzetta. Anna is just fresh out of juniors and is super dynamic, but wasn't as effective here. We didn't really talk about her, but she had a lot of struggles at this event versus Laura, who has that international experience that really showed and that maturity that has only grown and looked so effective and confident here. I loved those programs. She's got such an interesting point of view. I'm really fascinated to see what she chooses for next year because her short programs often are a little avant-garde and kind of interesting. And then she compares and contrasts that with free skates that are maybe a little bit more traditional, but are still just lovely vehicles for her skating. And she's just come so far, and I'm really excited for her.
Nice.
And then the Team Spirit Award then for me is just Jason Brown because of how wonderfully he led the U.S. team, how great he is at just bringing all of them together, how awesome it is that he speaks Japanese and can and interact with the crowd there as such a fantastic ambassador for the sport in general. We say that about Jason all the time, that he's like one of the best ambassadors for figure skating, but as a representative of the U.S. Federation and just American skating, I think it's terrific. And then, of course, he was almost perfect in his programs here, too.
Could not agree more on all of that, even though they were not my picks.
Well, that will wrap up our recap of the 2025 World Team event and wraps up the 2024-25 season. We are not done. We will continue to make episodes over the course of the season. We're still figuring out kind of a blend of podcasts and then hopefully some video content that we'll be doing later on in the season. But our next episode will be a little different because we will have a guest with us. We're going to have somebody else from the creator community in figure skating who will be on to talk with us about Worlds and the modernization of the sport. And so hopefully you'll join us for that because it's going to be a very different kind of conversation than we normally have.
And we are still planning to do a Q&A episode very soon. So if you have questions for us that we have not answered, or if you didn't like our answer and you want a new one, please submit them on our website, scoreography.show, or drop them in the comments on YouTube or DM us on Instagram. So any which way, send us your questions and we will try to include as many as we can.
Yeah, so we'll look for that coming up in the near future. We'd love to hear your questions. And for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
We will talk to you next time.
Bye.